Gavin Newsom, welcome to the Axios Show.
Good to be with you.
It's Axios. We like to get to the point. So let's dive into your book. New book, Young Man in a Hurry. It's a bestseller. You write a lot about how you often put on a mask when you were younger.
Yeah.
And then as you grew up, your face sort of molded into the mask.
Yeah.
So who is the real Gavin Newsom?
Well, that was part of the book. I mean, it was about scrutinizing my life, not sanitizing. It's about going back, and it became subtext there as a memoir of discovery. I had to go back and sort of uncover truths, secrets, lies that I never fully understood or absorbed. And it allowed me through that process to connect with my parents in a deeper way. They'd both passed away when I was writing this book, and of course, connect with my grandparents and folks that I didn't know much about. And so it was a remarkably cathartic process, and it's a process that was illuminating, alarming, in some respects, and explains more things about who I am today than I ever understood. My anxieties, my insecurities, some strengths, weaknesses that have echoes generationally. So it was a remarkable experience. Anyone that's done something like this understands, I think. But for me, this was not by design. This was not the book that I was intending to write, and it started to write itself over the course of 5 years.
So is the mask, is it the slick back hair? Is it the suits? Like, what's the mask and what's the person underneath?
Well, the old phrase, I think it was a George Orwell short story about how he shot an elephant and how he put a mask on and his face grew into it.
Yeah.
And he became something that he never even understood or expected to become, but he ultimately had to pose. The old Oscar Wilde pose, that the first duty in life is to assume a pose. The second duty, no one knows. And so this notion of a pose, this what I expected to be as a son, what I expected to be as a brother, what I expected to be from the perspective of success societally, what that meant. I had to be something. It wasn't about doing something. It was about this notion of, trying to put on, as you suggest, not just a mask, but a suit and tie, the hair gel, to become how society expected me to behave. And finding in that process this young man that was in a hurry, that didn't see the world from anyone else's sets of eyes. And I talk about that very honestly in terms of relationship with my mom, relationship with my family, and how I was just charging ahead, trying to be, and how I had some moments that really defined sort of a stepping back and reflection and going deeper to try to understand what the real motivations are. So for me, it was about, as so often is the case when you write, and you're a writer, I'm not, but just letting go. And it's okay. All the warts and all, if you're looking for perfection, I mean, that's the last damn book you should look for. If you're looking for perseverance, maybe it's interesting. And I think that's the pose perhaps now, is that I'm not trying to be something anymore, I'm trying to do something. And I'm okay about the third thing, which is how you may feel about it. I can't control that. And so much of my life, and I think it's sort of subtext in the book, was trying to control things I can't control.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to realize, and that's why I say sort of letting go. At a certain point in your life, it's not what happens to us, it's how we respond to what's happened. But that's the only thing you can control. And there's freedom to that at the same time.
So by writing this book, this is you pulling the mask off in some ways.
Yeah, in some ways. Or it's just reflecting on what so often is the case with young people, what's so often the case with a lot of people, that we are sort of shaped by how society expects us, again, to behave. And we're shaped by, by our relationship to family and their expectations, their unfinished work, shaped by friends, by communal relationships. And so many people finding not their path, but finding someone else's path, living not their life, but living someone else's life. And so I try to navigate that throughout the book, but also navigating the context of being, living in two worlds, my father's world, and then my mother's world, and how that also shaped me, and feeling at times connected to both, but also an imposter in both. And so that's what I tried to pull back, a little bit of the curtain of what people perceive and believe about me, and my lived experience in the context of who I am, but also who I'm becoming.
I mean, it is an unusual political memoir, and that at times, it read to me almost like an overshare, especially for a politician. Why did you do that?
Because I'm let it go. So guys like me come and go. I'm the future ex-governor. I remember saying when I ran for mayor, I got sworn in, I think the inaugural speech was, "I'm your future ex-mayor." I mean, that feels like it's black and white movie days. So I deeply know my status, and I know my status, why we're even sitting here. Sort of it's situational, it's moments. You have moments in time. And, I don't wanna look back in my life and dream of regretting. And I think that's really shaped my politics in the last couple of years. I've just shifted. So much have
Become
been
more less risk averse.
yeah, though I've always maintained, I mean, you can see that. I mean, back in 2004, I was marrying same-sex couples.
Mhm.
I mean, so I've always been out there. I think a lot of that is part of, you know, and I write honestly about my own learning disabilities and dyslexia. I think that also deeply shapes my more of an entrepreneurial mindset, a willingness to take risks, try new things, to iterate. And I've taken that entrepreneurial framework and the small business background I have into the politics of my life. But I think more importantly, again, it's just, again, I said the third thing, not caring as much about the third thing, the thing I can't control, and just allowing it to be. And I don't want it to sound overly stoic here, but I also just I think it's part of a maturation of my life. I don't know if there's wisdom in it, but there's experience in it, and I share. And to the extent it's political, and yeah, most of us are not willing to overshare
Mhm.
because we want to say, well, I tried this, it didn't work. And in that failure, I became much stronger and now I'm much wiser. And that's why I have a 10-point plan for America's renewal.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
I wanted to go deeper and I wanted to really challenge the assumptions that I was making about myself in those experiences and go a step further to challenge them again.
Yeah, you didn't wanna, like, "What's your weakness? Why try too hard?"
Yeah, right, exactly. I care too much. I
Yeah.
mean, if you hear another one of those
It's
answers.
YOLO Gavin.
Thank you. Yeah, no, exactly. And look, the critics are gonna say that, and that's okay. And again, in the past, I would wanna control that. I wanna
Mhm.
challenge that. And I talk about that in the book, how I was trying to challenge perceptions about me
Mhm.
and how I played into that. I played the type when you're dressed up and, your suit and tie, and, I was doing that in high school, and you're
Mm.
putting the hair down, you're playing into that even as you're pushing back against it. And so I also scrutinize that aspect of me. And now again, I'm just willing to accept those things which I cannot control. As much as they may be frustrating, as much as, yeah, I'm human, I don't like that characterization. I don't like what's on Fox 24/7
Mhm.
in the California derangement or the Gavin Newsom derangement syndrome,
Mhm.
dare I suggest. It's not just Trump. And how that caricature sort of shapes people's perceptions of me and my lived reality in that
Yeah.
respect. But again, there's certain things that I simply cannot control.
The word "slick" bothers you.
Yeah, of course, and it would, I think, anybody, but
Sure.
then again, I get why I play into it. If I was sitting here with you and I had a baseball hat on and, I just showed up and, just I get how I mean, I could, but then I'm fake. Then I'm
Mm.
also not then I'm not myself. So, to the extent this is who I've become, it's what I am. You don't have to like it. It's okay. I respect that. I'm not trying to be something now I'm not. And you have 1,000 alternatives. You can turn this interview off right now. You can tune in to someone else or something else. You can tune up or tune down, and that's okay. And again, I'm not trying to chase that or chase something the way that young man in the hurry was constantly chasing things.
You brought up your dyslexia. President Trump the other week said, that he believes a president should not have learning disabilities. Is he wrong?
Well, maybe prime ministers can. I mean, Churchill was one of them. I don't know, idiots like Edison, and huge Trump supporters like Chuck Schwab and, other, famously unsuccessful people like Richard Branson. I don't know. It's rather curious. I think some of the most successful and talented and some of the most daring entrepreneurs tend to share some learning differences. I think Trump and I share some learning differences, dare I say. He's not linear in many respects. Okay. So, I see this, it's a weakness in some respects. He's right about that. I write about that.
Mm.
I write about that struggle. I write about my mom saying it's okay to be average
Mm.
and a frustration that I was struggling to read. I talk about the fact that I struggled to read a speech on a page. That's why you don't see me do this. I could do it on a teleprompter,
Mhm.
but spatially I can't. That's not my skill set. But I make up for it in a lot of different ways. What hurts me about that is how many kids and families were hurt by a statement. And I'm not saying that flippantly. I'm used to Trump attacking me 24/7, new scum, the whole thing. But the amount of families that reached out to me and kids that have reached out to me hurt by those statements because they didn't see me in there. They saw themselves. And that's why I find him, everybody's redeemable, at times irredeemable, shameful, a shameful leader. Uh, we all deserve something better than that. People that voted for him deserve something better than that. People that are opposed to him deserve something that we all deserve something better than that. And we're all better than what our identity is as it relates to dyslexia. That doesn't define us. I didn't know that for years, and I struggle with that identity, that I was dumb. And so when you're told by the President of the United States that that's the case, you don't like it, but it allows me, again, perseverance and more grit and more energy, particularly to have the backs of these kids, because I know exactly how they feel sitting in the back of the classroom. I know exactly how they feel, oftentimes dumb. I know exactly what they're going through and their parents are going through because I lived it. My mom lived it. And for all those parents and for all those kids, shame on Donald Trump. And they have remarkable capacity as long as they develop confidence. And that's what he's trying to shatter. It's what he's always trying to shatter is confidence. He's about exploiting weakness. That's his one strength. That's his superpower, exploiting your weakness, sizing up your weakness. What he doesn't respond to is strength. And I think all of us have to have the strength of character, something he doesn't understand and will, to push back against it.
Lots of Democrats have cheered on the way that you've, challenged Trump, but it has brought on some detractors. Former Obama advisor David Axelrod said that some of the way you've gone after Trump amounts to, and these are his words, self-puffery. So are you a self-puffer, Governor?
I'm trying to put a mirror up to Trump and Trumpism, and I want to call out the deviancy. And with all due respect to those critics, I don't think they were doing an effective job. I don't think we were winning that narrative battle. I think he was shape-shifting. We were being shape-shifted. We were on our heels, not our toes. He was flooding the zone, shock and awe. And he had the complicit media across the spectrum that didn't see that there was anything wrong. President of the United States dressing up as the Pope, dressing up as, Superman, or putting his face on Mount Rushmore. And so I felt like we needed to push back on that with humor. And when we put the mirror up, it wasn't just up against Trump. It was against all his enablers. It was about Fox Network. It was about all the folks that called out my behavior, but weren't necessarily calling out the president's. And so our whole approach is about focusing again on how none of this can be allowed to be normalized and giving him no quarter in allowing this normalization that he is trying to shapeshift. And it's when we give up on that and when we deny our own eyes and those certain facts and we try to be holier than thou and win the argument that these guys are consolidating power. The right is ruthless, and we need to be more ruthless as a party, including with respect to what those critiques are in terms of our comms, in terms of our narrative, in terms of our strategy to go on the offense at peril. I really believe this will lose this country.
MSNBC's Chris Hayes recently compared you to Hillary Clinton, said that you have actually a fairly centrist record. But
I appreciate the compliment. Hillary is a remarkable superstar, but forgive me.
No. Well, the comparison is that you have a fairly centrist record, but the base doesn't fully trust you, and swing voters, and this is quoting Chris, consider you the libbiest lib who's ever lived. Are you Hillary 2.0?
I don't even know what. I don't fully understand his punditry, and so I'm not familiar with it. I am familiar with Hillary Clinton, and I have mad respect for her. Also familiar with my record, and to the extent there is another elected official that's done universal health care regardless of pre-existing conditions, ability to pay, and regardless of your immigration status, where I'm attacked often, we delivered it. I don't know any other elected official that's done $25 minimum wage for healthcare workers, $20 minimum wage for fast food workers, that created child savings accounts for 5.5 million Californians well before the Trump accounts were conceived, that created not a subsidy, but a new product, $11 insulin, that created a brand new grade at scale, preschool for all, 379,000 subsidized childcare slots, doubled the earned income tax credit, created a child tax credit, paid family leave, paid sick leave. It's pretty progressive record, and we don't even get into low carbon green growth, the environmental record, what I'll put up against anyone. So across the spectrum of issues, I'm proud not to have talked about it, but to deliver on these things. And I won't even get into the black and white movie days of free community college and things that people are promoting. So I'm very proud of that. At the same time, I don't think you have to be profligate to be progressive. And I don't think being, you can't sort of argue to be pro-job and anti-business. And so I have an entrepreneurial background. I started a small business, write about it in the book, created about 1,000 employees at peak, 21 businesses. I don't say that to impress anyone, but to impress upon you, I have a different lived experience as a progressive but pragmatic politician that believes we're all better off and we're all better off, growth and inclusion. And so to the extent that is not knitted easily in one sort of old category of punditry, good. Because I'm not that. I'm not going to allow people to categorize something I'm not. When I'm open to argument, I'm interested in evidence. I believe in the spirit of Clinton, community, opportunity, but also Democrats, we need to talk about it, responsibility. And that's a three-legged stool. Often we're focused too much on two of those legs, and responsibility, I think, is an attribute. That's why I'm very proud if he wants to quote or at least reflect a relationship to the Clintons, who I admire.
Barack Obama recently praised you for your leadership on Prop 50. Have you guys stayed in touch?
Yeah, I saw him at Jesse Jackson's memorial just a few weeks ago, and I've had the privilege of being a number of phone calls and conversations with him. And he's
What do you
been
talk about?
incredible. Well, I'll tell you, I'll be candid with you. And full disclosure, I'll say it publicly. I remember calling him very nervous when I was seeking his advice. It wasn't even approval or support; it was just advice.
Last summer.
Yeah, on Prop 50, because when they go low, we go high. I was expecting that. And he cut right. I didn't even get into the conversation. And he says, I just want to let you know, I like what you're saying, all this, and I hope you do this. And it would just sort of moved us into a different gear in terms of the relationship. And he really supported that campaign, did a bunch of Zoom calls with us and campaigned for it, and was extraordinary. And he gave us the cover and the moral authority, despite, all of his work that he did around independent redistricting, which we all promote and believe in. By the way, the voters of California do as well, because I'll remind you, in Prop 50 was fighting fire with fire, respectfully. We need to fight fire with fire. It was about substance, not style, because we actually successfully shifted 5 seats, we believe, into the blue column. But it also affirmed, from a national prism, the people of the state of California, calling for a national independent redistricting commission, which we must do to get away from the politics of gerrymandering. But we also have to save this country from the recklessness and the wrecking ball that is the Trump presidency, who's trying to rig the election before one vote is cast this November, and is just winding up in a dozen other efforts, literally a dozen other strategies to try to rig the 2026 election. That's how serious this moment is.
Have you talked to former President Obama about another potential future campaign?
No, I haven't had those conversations.
CNN also reported that you've been talking to former President Biden, too. What have you guys been talking about?
Well, as you know, I have a strong relationship with a former president, and someone I deeply admire and deeply respect, and feel a deep connection to. Not least of which, I might write in my book about my father's love of Seamus Heaney, and President Biden's love of Seamus Heaney, and so much of his experiences mirror so many of my father's. I see my father in so many ways, the way I see President Biden. That's one of the reasons I was so loyal to the end, and I happily will take the arrows on that and defend that. But no, I'm blessed to have gotten to know him, to defend him, defend his character, and continue to defend his record. And I think it was a masterclass of policy making. I'm old-fashioned, believe in politics. It's about good ideas, better policy, and he delivered the chips and science, delivered on the infrastructure bill, delivered on the IRA, delivered on a worker-centered industrial policy, delivered on the SAVE Act, delivered on issues for veterans, delivered tough bills, many of them in a bipartisan way, over 400 bipartisan bills, in a way that I think deserves some more recognition candidly, than he's
Or,
received.
I mean, are you talking to about foreign policy, current events? What are you talking about?
What we're
Now?
talking about, last time I talked to him without breaking trust, he was, again, very appreciative of some of the work we were trying to do, fight fire with fire.
Mm.
But I was talking to him about, he's right in the middle, near the end of, not now the middle, but almost at the end of writing his memoir and book, and how he's spending the day. And I'd be candid with you, it's just, frankly, just checking in on his health.
Mm.
How you doing?
And is that
How's the
Biden that you're
family?
talking to capable of being president today?
That's look, he's the health issues have obviously accelerated and become more real. And I saw him, didn't have a chance to engage, but I was just sat right 2 rows behind him at the Jackson Memorial as well. I regret that we didn't have a chance to say hello. I had to sneak out right after he spoke. But look, I think obviously. Time of life is caught up, particularly as it relates to the physical challenges he's had, and particularly with this diagnosis.
So, former Vice President Kamala Harris, why don't you guys like each other?
It's a preposterous premise of a question, because we absolutely do.
Well, she
And
took a
always
shot
have.
at you in her book. You didn't speak at her convention. I mean, we can even go back to the San
Well,
Francisco days with her and Guilfoyle. I mean,
no,
there seems to be something there.
no, quite the contrary. I introduced her at the convention. It was even more personal. I actually was the one that got enough votes that gave her the nomination, and I had the privilege of speaking in front of the convention. So it was the ultimate affirmation of that relationship.
So BFFs.
That goes back 20 plus years, goes back before we were both in politics, when we spent time together. We'd been on vacations with mutual friends out of the country together. So I've known her for years and years, and all these kind of carnations. I just think we've always been on the same ballot. When I got sworn in as mayor, I write about it in the book,
Yep.
walked across the street, swore in as district attorney. Obviously, she made her way to the state. I made my way to the state shortly thereafter. And so I've always had a relationship in that respect, but I also have known my relationship to that relationship, that when she goes first. And I've always understood that. And that's wonderful. And I think the press and pundits want to make something of that. And so they try to color it in. She gave me a little shot as it relates to the actual truth of the walk I was on. And I remember texting her back. I said, Kamala, I've already put out a statement supporting you. They're the last person you need to talk to. But for whatever reason, she added that in. I think it created some color for the book. And it certainly helped her book sales. Not my component part, but that book is done unbelievably well.
Did you read it?
Well. I did not fully read it. I've got it. I've read excerpts. I admit, Kamala, I have not fully absorbed the book. I should, but I was more focused on getting mine out.
Well, I was curious, given what you also just said about President Biden, were you surprised at some of the shots she took at former President Biden in the book?
I'll leave it to her. I'm not surprised. You know what? Read my book. I'm not surprised by anything. I mean, life is life. We have situational judgments. We have some we look back with regret that didn't stand the test of time. People do what they need to do in the moment, and then they feel one way in this moment. They may feel differently in another moment, different circumstance. But again, here's the word, and it's a word I use often: grace, just grace, and some humility as well. We've all said things, there's certain things we haven't said that we wish we could say too, but knowing, how those become their own weather systems, and they become these massive distractions. And in the world of politics and punditry, we're so prone to distractions, and we're dealing with the shock and awe of the master of distraction and chaos, Donald Trump. So tend not to try to run into that.
I know you said you aren't surprised by anything, but were you surprised she didn't run for governor?
I wasn't surprised. I was surprised that everybody was surprised. But coming off a grueling campaign, coming off what she went through over the course of the last 45, 6, 7 years when she ran for president, and just knowing her and the hard work and the sacrifice, spent time with her in the White House. We had a few wonderful moments, including just a legendary lunch the two of us had, where we were making phone calls on my phone because she didn't get the kind of phone that I have, which is with my old contacts. And so she said, do you remember so-and-so? We were having one of these nostalgic things. And I had so much empathy. I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to get out of here, being stuck in the White House. And I walked out of there as governor feeling so free and really empathetic for people. That's why I'm a little more empathetic about Trump wanting to get out of the White House every week. It becomes, so many ways claustrophobic physically and emotionally. But no, it's, look, Kamala, just on Kamala, is an incredibly talented person. who can do anything. She doesn't have to be anything anymore. She was the first female vice president, African-American vice president. She's first female African-American, nominee of our party. She's lived an extraordinary life. She's exceeded so many people's expectations, maybe not her own. And she may run for another office. She may run, for school board. I don't know what her future will hold, and I'll be supportive of her. I always have been.
I'm going to do a hard pivot to a less complicated topic, the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. Less complicated.
So,
there's no nuance in this conversation.
There's been some headlines. I just want to clear this up. Yes or no? Do you consider Israel an apartheid state?
I said that was directional as it relates to what Freeman was arguing about the annexation of the West Bank. So no, but in the context of his pursuit in the hard and the far right, I align with that concern and that thinking that was expressed very pointedly by Tom Freeman.
Yeah. So you think they're potentially on the path to becoming an apartheid state if they continue?
My biggest concern, my red flag, is Bibi Netanyahu, period, full stop. Mm-hmm. And his opposition to the two-state solution, how he is navigating his own domestic politics as it relates to placating the far right, thus the annexation concerns, how he's influencing events that are now out of our control, and we're not. We haven't even focused much on what's happening in southern Lebanon, issues there, intended and unintended consequences, the future of Gaza, the Board of Peace, which is about Trump and Witkoff and Jared Kushner getting their peace, if we can discuss that, and what happens to the future of the Middle East. And so, I've been very critical of him. And I say that as a guy who visited Bibi.
Right after October 7th.
Right after October 7th, because of the relationship I've had, not only with the Jewish community here, but my relationship to the people of Israel. And so I've long supported the state of Israel.
Let's talk about tech and AI. You've said that AI, you're supportive, but it needs guardrails. What's the one guardrail you think the nation should adapt right now on AI?
My legislation, SB 53, the first safety regulation in the United States of America. I mean, people should focus on the fact we did the first large language model, frontier model, safety regulations of AI in the country. New York backed into our model. We believe it's a model for the nation, and it's a model that Trump should adopt immediately. It took 3 years to build consensus around this regulatory framework. California has led in regulating AI, and we're going to lead as it relates to the anxieties and concern about work and the future of work in relationship to what AI means, but also address the issue of truth and trust at the same time. So I signed 18 AI bills last year. We led on the large language model. We've been leaders as it relates to watermarking and robocalls, leaders as it relates to deep fakes. We'll continue to do more in that space, including social media. I think it's time to have a deeper conversation we're having with our legislature this year on age gating, 16 and younger, and more accountability. And ultimately, this is deeper conversation, more of a federal one around Section 230, some issues that are long overdue in terms of real substantive debate. But in the absence of federal leadership, California's leading.
A lot of tech leaders talk about the probability of an apocalyptic scenario when it comes to AI. Sometimes they call it Pdoom. Some people put it in the double digits. Do you have a Pdoom?
Yeah, look, I depends who I meet on any given day of the week. And I'm interfacing with these guys all the time. On the entire spectrum.
Sometimes it's 5%, sometimes it's 20%.
Yeah.
Like how high does it go on some days?
People don't know, but we don't know what we don't know. But there are the doomers out there. I mean,
Are you one?
I'm not a doomer.
Okay.
I can't live like that. I just believe you have to paint it up. So, we have to manifest a brighter future. We're not victims. We're not bystanders. We can shape the future. It's decisions, not conditions that will determine the fate and future of AI. I believe in acceleration and competitive frame, but I also believe in guardrails, and I also believe in steering the debate, which we failed to do with social media. We paid a huge price. We're more lonely. We're more depressed. We're more addicted than we've ever had. We have a crisis with young men, crisis with young people that is real. And we have to own that. Let's not make the same mistakes with AI. We are right now in the middle of this debate, in the center of the universe in California, where the energy and daring, 32, arguably 35 of the top 50 AI companies in the world are located here. We have a unique responsibility to lead in terms of not just this conversation, but lead in terms of regulation that allows us to outcompete our competitors, address legitimate national security issues, but also protect the people that we serve, and to also paint a picture where people feel they're included and not alienated. Truth, trust, fair and free elections, competitiveness, war and peace, all of them being painted in very bright colors, some vivid, some bright, some dark. And we have an obligation in the absence of David Sachs, in the absence of Donald Trump, in the absence of J.D. Vance, believing that they have a responsibility to regulate. They don't. They're the let 'em rip folks. And that has to be called out, and California has to step in.
Well, you've known these guys for decades.
Yeah.
Can you give me your one-sentence summary on 3 of these guys? So, Sam Altman.
Innovator, entrepreneur, remarkably. He's a guy that you look at a mountain, he's a guy who can see. As he's standing there at the base of the mountain, he can see right through it.
Peter Thiel.
Incredibly next level mind, increasingly more nihilistic in terms of his rhetoric. There's sort of an energy there. I've known him for years and years and years, back to my county supervisor days when he was a constituent. But next level intellect, not to be underestimated in any way, shape, or form. And he shouldn't be put purely in a political box, as I know my party often puts him into. He belongs in many different boxes.
Elon Musk.
One of the great disappointments. One of the great innovators of our time. I brought up Edison before. He's Edison of our time. It breaks my heart. I was the first, got one of the first Teslas off the line. I've been one of their biggest proponents, supporters. It was regulation in California that created the conditions that allowed him to take the risk to become the multi-billionaire, maybe trillionaire that he's become, including Solar City and some of the regulatory frameworks that launched Elon Musk. And he launched this space. Now he's going to space, and he's now turning his back, not only in the state that promote him, though he has no problem getting the R&D tax credits and moving his world headquarters on R&D here and having Grok here and most of his talent here, which is also interesting. But right now he's allowing, and I think this is Trump, not just Elon Musk, he's going to allow the greatest on goal in, I think, one of the most significant on goals in the next decade is ceding the EV space to China. They have 70% of the global EV market. It's about statecraft with them. It's about supply chains. They're flooding the zone all around the globe, including now right on the border into Canada, where they're going to have 49,000 cars getting that tariff down there. And it's a stack play. It's a national security play. And I really fear what's going to happen to American legacy automobile manufacturers. Elon was the one accelerating that. Now he's put the brakes on his own innovation in that space and now shifted to robotics, humanoids, including the line here at Fremont, his largest manufacturing line, arguably outside of Shanghai, the largest in the world.
My last question for you. Your father, you write in this book, was a big Shakespeare fan. You named your restaurant group after Falstaff from Henry IV.
Yeah.
So what was your dad's favorite Shakespeare play, and is it different than yours?
No, I think we all fell in love with Henry IV, and we and Falstaff. What I love about Falstaff, he was sort of the great rogue. He was the comic character, and there's that wonderful scene at the end where Prince Hal is becoming king, and his buddy that he was out there, this rogue friend of his, had a lot of fun with the prince, goes up to the throne, the kingdom, and there's sort of, I'm not painting it well, and Hal's there, now king, and here's the lumbering rogue, Falstaff himself, running up to the palace. We've made it. We now running the kingdom. And the new king, his old friend, the prince, turns around. He goes to poor Falstaff and says, "I know thee not, old man." The weight and responsibility of now being king sort of put that different mask on to frame this conversation.
Hal made the right choice.
Well, it breaks my heart a little bit for poor Jack Falstaff. And so I've always there's an empathy and a connection to him. Plus, he's just one of the great comic characters in literature. So that's my Shakespeare for the moment. And I am getting through. I have 4 kids, and they've stopped me from watching Hamnet. I'm literally 30 minutes in. My kids keep stopping in, and I can't watch the full thing. But
Definitely how the director meant it to be
I don't know.
seen.
I like Shakespeare in Love. I have a whole. I'm a romantic guy. I love Love Actually is my favorite Christmas movie. I'm an empath. I'm not about power, dominant aggression. I think the superpowers are empathy, care, and collaboration. We can use a little of that in our country right now. And there's a moment we're all going to be able to shift from this resilience mindset to renewal. We'll be repairers of the breach in the spirit of Isaiah. We're all looking forward to that moment as we paint a positive picture of a journey that we can all go on together, and we can address all this anxiety and this stress and chaos that we're experiencing with Trump and Trumpism today.
Thank you so much, Governor Newsom. Great to have
be
you.
with you. Thank you.